Welcome to Bucs Insider Live, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and it's here. The regular season of football is here.
I'm glad you told me.
Yeah, you would have forgotten otherwise, I'm sure. You haven't been writing about it or thinking about it at all. But tonight, football is back. It's not the Bucs, but it's back. And this Sunday, Bucs football is back. I'm so excited, and I just feel like there's been so many interesting things about this team and this roster after a couple years of where it was stayed very the same.
Kept the gang together.
Yes, that it was, for us, sometimes even hard of like, well, everybody already knows all these people, coming up with some of these storylines, and now there's so many interesting individuals and position groups and things to talk about. One that I think is so interesting is the outside linebacker group. There are so many stories there, both from a roster as a whole standpoint of how many we kept and how deep it is, to individual guys like Shaq Barrett. So I'd love to hear just for you some of the overall thoughts about that position group, and now that we have the final 53, what we know about them.
Well, yeah, I don't think because of the hurricane, we haven't had a show since the roster cut down to 53, right? And one of the most interesting things about the way that roster was constructed is that they kept 6 outside linebackers, which I don't know if that sounds like a lot to you, but historically going back since Todd Bowles has been here, that's the most we've ever had on the roster at one time. Most of the times we've kept 4. And on game day, you usually have the 2 starters, a third guy that rotates in a lot, and a fourth guy that gets a little bit of snaps, like Cam Gill. But 6 just indicates how much talent. They weren't kidding all during August when they said, we've just got so much talent that this position is going to be hard to cut down. And you don't want to let good pass rushers leave the building.
Right.
That's why you keep a guy who was a tryout player in May, like Marquise Watts, on the active roster, because you don't want to subject him to waivers. Like, let's say maybe we can try to put him on the practice squad. We can't risk it because we don't want to lose this guy. Yeah. And so there's a lot of talent there. And if you look at last year, by the end of last year, due to injuries to Carl Nassib, who, by the way, just apparently announced his retirement.
Very happy for him.
And Coach Bowles said some nice things about him yesterday. And Shaq Barrett, those injuries, by the end of last year, for about 3 weeks in a row, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Anthony Nelson were playing every snap.
Every snap, which is wild.
I mean, literally.
Position, yeah.
That never happens in that position.
Yeah.
So I don't think they wanted to be in that situation again. You get Shaq back from injury, you get Cam Gill back from injury, you draft Yaya Diaby and Jose Ramirez, who's on the practice squad, you find Marquise Watts, and you re-sign Anthony Nelson, and all of a sudden you got a lot of depth there. And the idea is, like last year, I think Vita Vea led this defense in sacks with 6.5, and that's great for Vita, and he's a Pro Bowl player, but you normally don't want your nose tackle to be your leading sack guy.
Right.
So they want more pressure from the edges. If you could get that, you might have like one of the best pass rushes we can remember, because you already got the great push inside, and you drafted Kalijah Cansey in the first round. But over the last 4 years, the Bucs have already been really good in sacks. I mean, if you look at this, these are the top 6, because there's a tie there. I should have put 5T at the bottom, but there's a tie there for the last 2 spots. 4 of the top 6 sack seasons in team history are the last 4 years.
Wow.
See 19, 20, 21, and 22 on there, right?
Yeah.
So, it's already good, and that's partially because Todd Bowles is a very aggressive play caller, and you use a lot of blitzes and so on. But still, your pressure has been pretty good already. But now you talk about possibly combining Vita, who you see there, with a robust edge rush where you can rotate guys in throughout the game depending on how many you keep active, and it could be something special.
Yeah, I think this will be really interesting to see, and I think this first game could be an interesting test for them. I mean, the Vikings tackles are, pretty decent typically.
Christian Darrisaw's good.
Yeah, and also knowing how much they want to be able to throw the ball deep downfield. If you're wanting to give Justin Jefferson time, you're wanting to let those plays develop, that hopefully that means Kirk Cousins trying to hold on to it a bit, and these guys are going to be able to try to tee off a bit and try to make him uncomfortable.
Their sacks allowed numbers were basically middle of the pack last year, but I don't know if you watched that quarterback series on Netflix. Kirk Cousins was one of them, obviously.
Took some beatings.
Feels like most of his story was about how beat up he was and how many times he got hit all year. So I don't know. Maybe there's some opportunity there.
Yeah. So, all right. Also, I know that one area we want to talk about is the run defense in particular, and versus Minnesota. It's easy to talk about Justin Jefferson and some of their passing attacks and everything,
Hawkinson.
But now they've lost Dalvin Cook. It's going to look very different for them. And so what are some of the things that you feel like this team is going to have to do to focus on outside of some of that passing attack?
Just yesterday, our defenders, I think Antoine Winfield was talking about how stopping the run is their #1 priority, and everybody's been talking all last month about how they really need to get back to where this defense was from 2019 to 21, when over that period I think they finished first, and third in the league in run defense. Last year it slipped to the middle of the pack. middle of the pack isn't the end of the world, but it's not what we're known for here.
Yep.
They want to get back to that, and so you want to get off to a nice start. And yeah, the Vikings don't have Dalvin Cook anymore, but as anybody who plays fantasy football knows, every time Dalvin Cook has missed a game in the last 4 or 5 years, Alexander Mattison has stepped right in and been really good, really productive. And if you look at this, he's made 6 starts. All those were because Dalvin Cook was hurt. Look at his averages in those 6 starts. I mean, that's pretty good. 115.5 yards from scrimmage and basically a touchdown every game. He's got 5 in 6 games. Also catches the ball about 4 times a game. This is a very productive player. So when you talk about the Bucs wanting to get off to a good start in terms of run defense, you talk about can they slow down Alexander Mattison.
And Antoine Winfield is someone I'm excited to watch in this game that, we know he gets to be back to focusing on safety this year and not having to also do the slot. But then, of course, also
back to his hometown.
back to his hometown. Grew up a Vikings fan. Dad played for them. Like, guys will say every game is the same and whatever, but like, there's maybe a little extra juice there.
And he has never played yet back in Minnesota because we haven't been there since 2017. But in his rookie year, we beat the Vikings here in Tampa, and he had a really good game, like 12 tackles and a sack and a forced fumble. So maybe there's a little something there.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. All right, and then of course one of the other things that I think everyone is excited to watch in this game is this new look offensive line. This
really
is a very new look, which is crazy that even some of the guys that are not new to the team, but to basically have Hainsey be the only guy that is starting where he was starting last year, and that was not the plan last year or this year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. So tell me what your thoughts are about this group and what you're going to be looking for.
Well, I mean, here you see it. I mean, Tristan Wirfs moves to the other side and replaces Donovan Smith. Matt Feiler was one of the few really big-time free agent acquisitions that we did during the offseason, and Cody Mauch was a second-round draft pick.
We made too many of those jokes about mock drafts. It screwed us up. We gotta come back.
Mock drafts, and then Luke Gedeke started last year at left guard, but he's now playing in his college position of right tackle. And I think there's a lot of optimism about this. one thing that the coaches like about this lineup is that a lot of these guys really are a good fit for the type of run scheme that Dave Canales is bringing in. So especially like Mauch and Gedeke, just really good at movement skills when you may be trying to do some mid and wide zone and you're doing lateral movement. And so I think they're excited about it. I don't think anybody's the least bit concerned about Tristan Wirfs handling left tackle. I
don't think there's a position on the team I wouldn't be happy with him playing. That guy just somehow, I'm like, he'll figure it out. Quarterback, DB, safety, whatever.
Well, he said also that this playing in the, they didn't play a lot of their starters the first 2 games. Playing in that 3rd preseason game and getting some actual snaps in a live game at left tackle was kind of like basically the last step for him. He's like, okay, yeah, I got this.
I've done it.
He admitted there was a little bit of jitters because he hadn't done it before, but then he did it like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm a left tackle now. So
love that.
I think there's a lot of optimism about these guys, but it is absolutely fair to say, well, we don't know yet, right? So that's going to be one of probably the main storylines of the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Is this line working out the way that we think it will?
And the good news is, even if maybe it isn't quite as solid, maybe especially just right early on, takes some time to grow, you do have a quarterback that can move around a bit.
Yeah.
That with Brady, it was like you knew he wanted to be able to sit there in that pocket.
Yeah, or get rid of the ball.
Or get rid of the ball quickly. And now the idea that Baker can be on the move a little bit, he feels like that's something that's good in his game. That's something Canales has even schemed up a little bit. I'm sure that will help the offensive line a little bit of knowing it's not like, if you've given up this spot, that's it, we're done.
It helps, but then it's also another challenge because let's say you're the left tackle and, Baker Mayfield takes off, which Tom Brady basically never did, which doesn't matter. He was still the GOAT. But now you got to worry, now you got to figure out where the guy is and in which way you got to block. So, but that's not unusual. Most teams have guys that move around a little bit. But not only will the Bucs be doing planned movement with bootlegs and so on with their quarterbacks, but Dave Canales has said basically 2.7 seconds is when they want to get the ball off by, and if you haven't thrown it by then, you need to have a clock in your head, and if you haven't thrown it by then, you probably need to move.
Yep.
Get outside and either scramble or buy time and do scramble drills.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch the new Canales offense. We know they don't pull out all the stops in preseason, so
it was very vanilla the first 2 games, and then the 3rd game they cracked open that playbook just a little bit. And it was cool to hear Baker talk about that. He's like, because in that 3rd game, he had 1 drive. He only threw 1 pass in the first drive. It was a 3-and-out. Second drive was a great drive. It was 6 for 6 and touchdown. And then he came out, and Kyle Trask got his first drive, and it was an awesome 94-yard touchdown drive with a good mix of plays. And Baker was like, it was really cool to see Dave get in a groove play calling.
That's great.
You know, it's his first time play calling, so it is cool to see that happen, and it's cool to see what this offense could be.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider Live. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back here next week to talk about that first game against Minnesota.